When anyone is asked the question, what does America need? Most Americans would answer in the negative. Democrats might say we need to get rid of Donald Trump. Republicans might say we need to get rid of illegal immigrants. Atheists might say we need to stop allowing the Christian worldview to dominate our traditions as a nation. Christians might say we just need to get rid of Planned Parenthood. Today's America has fewer people acting in support of anything. Instead, their actions are based on opposition to something or someone. It's as if we've lost hope in the good in America and have instead focused on getting rid of the bad. Many would say there's really no difference between supporting a cause and opposing the counter-cause, but I beg to differ. Supporting a cause is driven by hope. Opposing the counter-cause is driven by anger. This disillusionment that has permeated across American society is why NOQ Report has been formed. Above all else, Americans need to be given clarity about what's happening in our world and how we can truly address these issues through promotion of good ideas instead of simply opposing bad ones. It may sound like a delusion of grandeur to think one news outlet with a website and a newly formed YouTube channel can tackle such a need, but part of the problem in America is that too few are breaking away from the angst-driven news cycle in a meaningful way. There seems to be two schools of thought. People either let themselves get immersed in the mainstream media's perverse news cycle, or they willfully ignore it. We need more Americans to see the problems clearly by going outside of the boundaries that corporations in Washington, D.C. want to impose. Last year, a small group of journalists got together to start what we thought would be just another conservative news site. Our focus was going to be on the news, opinions, and quotes that act as commentaries on American life as it is now and how it can all be made better. Thus, we took the acronym of our primary focus points and turned them into the name of our website, NOQ Report. Unfortunately, I was sidetracked until very recently. Real life happens. I was in the middle of helping to form the Federalist Party while caring for our newborn son who had 2 open-heart surgeries last year. Needless to say, I was busy, and so were those who shared my vision. The remnant that remained ran the site for the first half of 2018 until life settled down enough for me to get back involved. Despite the setbacks, the site has been thriving. Traffic has tripled in the last 2 months. We're now prominently placed in Google News, giving us a voice to counter the anti-American whims of mainstream media on their own turf. With our notoriety emerging, it's prudent to set a clear direction so we do not get trapped in the same cycle that has doomed so many pro-American news outlets. Instead of pointing out their foibles, I'll tell you all the problems in America that we intend to address. To answer the question of what America needs now and going forward, we need to know the threats that America faces. These threats can be broken down into 3 categories. As a mindset, collectivism may be the biggest hurdle to overcome. It's spreading in the form of increased popularity of socialism, calls by citizens and politicians alike to curtail our natural rights as humans and our constitutional rights as Americans, and the cognitive dissonance of supporting a globalist agenda. It doesn't matter how many scientific studies and social experiments confirm that individualism is by far the best path to help the collective. The liberty grabbers invariably want to impose their ideas on the people. They prefer taxation over philanthropy. They believe in government-run solutions over private market solutions. Their quest to help everyone hurts everyone instead. The saddest part is that collectivism is very clearly designed to empower the elite by bringing everyone else down to a similar status of peasantry. Collectivist leaders preach about the suffering of the poor from one of their glorious mansions while collecting more in interest than most hardworking Americans make in wages. Don't get me wrong, I'm not against the rich. I'm not against capitalism. I'm against those who use their status to promote themselves while claiming to fight for the common man. It's the greatest hypocrisy in American society today. But it's not just the rich and powerful. Even the poor activists fighting for better lives are easily caught up in notions of economic equality being superior to opportunity equality. Our rights as individuals are bestowed by a higher power and protected by the Constitution. As a nation, we need to defend the rights of the individual if we're ever to have a society that can end poverty and bring about true prosperity. The only reason the narrative of collectivism is allowed to flourish is because mainstream media promotes it. The people are stirred to a frenzy by the journalistic puppets of collectivist groupthink, often referred to as the leftist or progressive movements. It is wrongly associated with liberalism, or more accurately, the true nature of classical liberalism that embraces individualism. Even in the shifted definition of the term liberalism itself can we see the machinations of media propaganda at work. It isn't just propaganda, though. American media has turned to censorship as another tool to confuse the masses. This comes in the form of voices silenced on social media platforms. It's embodied by corporate media mentality that forbids discussions about truthful ideas. There are no longer mainstream media debates about evolution, climate change, or conspiracies. The voices that want to discuss the truth are quashed. We hear of quote-unquote settled science and heavily debunked claims about everything from 9/11 to George Soros to the Federal Reserve. Sadly, it isn't just the debunking that happens with such topics that embodies the problem. Wacky conspiracy theorists and extremist groups have helped make any discussion on forbidden topics unwelcome. One doesn't have to believe that 9/11 was an inside job to ask about certain questionable components of the terrorist attack, but any discussion of 9/11 is relegated to the wacky truther garbage heap. Since white supremacists have spread vile messages about George Soros, any mention of him by a public figure is classified as quote-unquote regurgitating white supremacist anti-Semitic messaging, even if someone says something truthful about the world's most prolific globalist. As for the Federal Reserve, it's a topic that few are willing to honestly debate. We will not promote crazy conspiracy theories, but we will not ignore truths just because they've been lumped in with the flat earthers and notions that Paul McCartney died in 1966. Not all conspiracy theories are crazy, though many are. Between mainstream media promoting collectivism and corporate media like Google and social media censorship, it's no wonder Americans are starting to give up on hope for the future. There are many religions that do not get classified as such. Climate change, for example, has been revved up with a zealotry at the level of a bloodless Spanish Inquisition. Any scientist who asks questions about inconsistent data in climate models is instantly labeled a climate change denier who must be purged from the Church of Science forever. Journalists have been fired, politicians have been ousted. It's impossible for a Democrat who is a skeptic to ever win office in America. I'm not suggesting that climate change isn't real. I'm simply pointing out that faith in certain types of climate predictive models, combined with the radical devotion to environmental advocacy, has turned many Americans into disciples of nature that acts as their religion. To us, the Judeo-Christian biblical worldview is not only the most beneficial to society, but also the most realistic explanation of our existence. We will not be swayed by secular adherence to political correctness, nor will we be bullied into quashing our views. By no means would we advocate for a theocratic perspective or one that does not tolerate other religions. We believe the best way to maintain freedoms for us to practice our Judeo-Christian faith is to allow all faiths, whether Muslim, Hindu, atheist, or anything else, to be free in America. The separation of church and state must be maintained to protect the church, not the state. But even within the Christian faith lies many false teachings. It's naive to believe that churches are immune to the powers and principalities bound by their oath to subvert the Lord's will. Many have used the promise of salvation to line their own pockets. Some have created blasphemous false representations of the Judeo-Christian faith to lead a willing flock down the wrong path. If anything, these abominable beliefs are more dangerous than other religions. What does America need in 2019 and beyond? It needs more debate, more perspectives, and more voices to replace the old, tired representatives of politics, culture, and religion. I am very hopeful that NOQ Report can fill a void that most Americans don't even realize exists. There may be no shortage of sound in the cacophony that overloads their daily media consumption, but there's definitely a shortage of cohesive thought that goes beyond the clickbait and the false narratives that drive media. What America needs, and what NOQ Report hopes to deliver, is much needed clarity. I'm J.D. Rucker. Thank you for listening.